With all the heavy deadlifting that I do on a consistent basis, coupled with the reality that I spend a significant portion of my day seated at a desk, it should come as no surprise that quite a few people reach out and want to know how I manage relative discomfort in the lower back. So it also might come as a surprise to you that I generally don't feel much discomfort in my lower back whatsoever. Part of this lack of discomfort is due to the fact that the progressions that I make in the weight room are very manageable. They're strategic, they're structured, meaning volume increases on any given deadlift variation are never more than 2%. And increases in load are extremely conservative to ensure that the stress being applied, both in terms of volume and load, is manageable. It's a degree of stress that I can efficiently recover from, and because I can recover from it so efficiently, I'm much less likely to experience severe soreness and fatigue as a byproduct. As well, there's something I do generally every morning in terms of mobility that has assisted quite a bit, considering I used to get a lot of discomfort in one side of my lower back, mainly because I sat in such a poor position almost all the time. The reality is my sitting mechanics suck. And what ends up happening is after a couple of hours behind the computer, I tend to lean to one side. And it's worth noting that I rarely sit for hours on end. I tend to get up every 45 minutes or an hour and move around, maybe make some content or just go to the washroom or grab a water or what may be. I make a conscious effort to get up regularly throughout the day, but as the day drags on, I tend to find myself leaning to one side or the other, whichever tends to be most comfortable. What I found for a while was I was getting quite a bit of discomfort only on one side of my lower back. And I'm confident that the majority of discomfort I do experience, if and when I do experience it, is a byproduct of the sitting, and rarely, if ever, from actually lifting heavy weights, which is not something most people would expect, but it kind of makes sense because the strength training is very structured and strategic, and it's short-term, high-intensity work. Whereas the sitting is hours and hours and hours of poor positioning that compounds over time. So in the mornings, I like to take about maybe 3 to 5 minutes, grab a lacrosse ball, and do some piriformis work before I start my day. Now, basically what I do is as follows. I find a spot on the ground. This is a perfect spot. And I take the ball and I place it underneath my right glute. And I take my right foot and I cross it over just above my left knee. And I bring that left heel in towards my left glute as much as possible. Then I make sure the majority of my body weight is driving down into that lacrosse ball. And I freestyle and move all over the mat. And I look for areas that are maybe a little bit tighter than others. I look for those knots. Oh, found one. When I find one, what I do is I drive downward pressure into the ball purposefully. And I hold that for maybe 10 or 15 seconds if I can bear it. And then I return to more tissue work. Moving back and forth. Try not to go too fast. It's not always beneficial to go faster. Slow and controlled, really working that tissue out. Now, I like to set a time on these instead of it's tough with a ball to say multiple passes as you might with a foam roller. But I like to set a predetermined time because then I'm much less likely to try and rush through it in terms of the speed of the movement of the drill itself. If I only had to do, say, 10 passes from one side of the glute to the other, you can rush through it very quickly and not get the same benefit as if you work methodically and deliberately. And therefore, a time frame tends to work better because you can do 1 pass in a minute or 10 passes in a minute. You still got to work that glute for a full minute. Generally, I'll do a minute on each side, rest, another minute on each side, and done. Less than 5 minutes of work. But if I am feeling that I have a little bit more tightness than I might usually, and I'm aware of it, then I might return to that midday or in the evening, depending on how the day is unfolding. But yeah, I incorporate that on a regular basis, consistently, and I have found that it has helped with a lot of the discomfort that I might have. In fact, when I first started doing this, the tissue was so knotted and restricted through my glutes, especially up in the hip area, which is where I tend to get any tightness anymore. But it was so bad that even just sitting on the ball caused excruciating discomfort. And it took quite a few months before I could actually spend a full 60 to 90 seconds on the ball in one pass. I had to break it up in like 15 to 20 second bouts because the discomfort was so high. But yeah, so I don't really experience much discomfort in my lower back whatsoever, but that's likely the reason why. The management of my programming coupled with some regular mobility work. This isn't the only drill I do, but it's definitely what I found to be the most progressive drill that I incorporate.